I decided to have a session on objection handling, a little bit deeper session. As you know, this quarter our theme is sales, working on your sales process. And when it gets right down to it, if a prospect had no objections, you'd have a 100% close rate, right? I mean, if they didn't have any issues, they didn't have any questions, I mean, it would be a 100% close rate. So I really do think that really awesome salespeople know how to navigate around objections, right? Yeah. So it's kind of funny. It's a little bit, I guess, tied into theme and time of year and so forth. But is anyone in here from North Carolina? Who's in here? Okay. Wow. Okay. So yeah. Wait. Yeah. You might not be So did you? So on the news, apparently there was a groundskeeper, a landscaper, or something that mowed around a dead body. Because he thought it was a Halloween prop, so he just kind of left it laying there. And apparently, I think the next day there was some construction worker that said, hey, there's like a dead guy laying here, and it was a pretty advanced decomposition, you know what I mean? And the family was all mad, because the groundskeeper, could have, I don't think, not saved the guy, but, And, when I heard that, aside from laughing, which all of you are going to hell with me because I laughed too, the thing that it made me think about is in sales, objections are kind of like those dead bodies laying on the lawn, and those normal dead bodies you have laying on the lawn. And most salespeople want to just ignore them and pretend it's not there so they don't have to deal with it, because that's the other thing I thought of when I heard about this landscaper mowing around a dead body. I'm like, I have heard a lot of excuses from employees as to why they skipped a step, haven't done the job, didn't notice something that was dysfunctional and wrong and fix it, but that really takes the cake, And I think that salespeople, in the same way, they don't like objections. They kind of hope they don't come up. They just sort of feel like they give their presentation, and I think that's it's really laziness, and I think it's laziness, and I think it's just based in fear. And so you've got to realize that every time you're interacting with a prospect and you're trying to sell them something, you have to realize that there are going to be objections. There's going to be things that they don't agree about. There's viewpoint that they have past experience that's going to get in the way. And so let me kind of explain to you why I think you need a good process for overcoming objections, because you have to think about the prospect that you're selling to, all right? So the majority of prospects don't like to make decisions. And I'm saying prospects, but really that's human nature. Most people, including maybe even some of you, are not good at making decisions. That's why Napoleon Hill listed decisiveness as one of the core characteristics of highly successful entrepreneurs. It's because they know how to make decisions. They make them quickly, they act decisively, they follow through on it. Most people stay where they are. They don't like change, they don't like to make decisions. That's why they give their power to other people. That's why they'll say things like, well, I need to talk it over with somebody else before I move ahead, because they don't want to bear the burden of the decision. So you got to understand, prospects don't like change. They don't like decision. You're already starting from a deficit with nearly every single prospect that you talk to. They don't know how to make good decisions, especially when it comes to choosing IT providers. They really don't know what to ask. They don't know what to look for. They don't know what good is. They're not technical. And, there's a saying, when you confuse, you lose. So when a confused prospect won't do anything, and when they're confused because they just don't understand the technology, they're hearing one thing from you, they're hearing another thing from someone else, you both sound convincing, and they don't know how to make a good decision. They're habitually indecisive and they procrastinate. That's human nature. So even though they need to do something, they don't do it. They're constantly overwhelmed and distracted, which is their excuse for not making a decision, because they've got so much else on their plate, and they're just saying, hey, I've got 12 other things I got to think about. I got to hire people, manage people, I have customer service issues, cash flow issues, I got tax issues, I've got all the things, right? They're completely and totally incapable of discerning what good is. Again, they don't know what they need. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't want to do due diligence. I mean, truthfully, what they should do is talk to 5 different providers and do deep due diligence and talk to previous customers, current customers. They should do more research, but most people don't want to do that. And again, it's human nature. We all do it to a certain degree. We just want somebody we can trust. That's why referrals are so important, because referrals hopefully shortcut the process of actually doing due diligence. And it also shortcuts the decision-making process, because if somebody I know, like, and trust says this is the guy, it makes it easy for me, because I don't have to do my own due diligence. I don't have to make a tough decision on my own. I can always say, well, so-and-so referred me to this person, much like the builder I have for my house, that was horrible. He was referred by Dave Ramsey. It's like, well, I don't have to do due diligence. I should have. So you can't just take that, but they're habitually indecisive, incapable of making good decisions. They make poor value judgments. We all know that, right? So they're looking at the price, not looking at the value. They're cheap, and they're grossly negligent, okay? So you guys know that. And selling prevention is way harder than it should be. The cure for cancer is millions and millions of dollars. Cancer prevention, nobody can sell it, right? Because it's like, well, exercise and, eat kale, right? Something like that. So that's not very sellable, but, obviously, so they're cheap, they're grossly negligent, and they often take the path of least resistance because it's easier, not because it's what's best for them. And when you look at this list, this is not just a good list to keep in mind when you're talking to a prospect. This is a good habit list for yourself, because there may be some of these behaviors that you indulge in, like taking the path of least resistance versus doing something that's good or right. So, for example, people want to outsource the SDR appointment setting piece of their business. And I tell them over and over again, I'm telling you, it's better if you bring it in-house. I've done this. I tell them, don't make your marketing manager make calls. That's not a good, I say all these things, and yet people will consistently come to me and say, I know you told me not to do this, but I did it anyway. Now help me fix it. That's the conversation, right? And so I get it. I understand it, because I tried it too when I was growing my business, and I tried to outsource the appointment setting. And because it's the path of least resistance. I write a check, and somebody else does the recruiting, the hiring, the training, the management. That's what we hope, but it never really works out that way. So anyway, you have to keep this in mind. This is why when you're selling to someone, you have to keep in mind this is the state that they are in, and this is why they have objections. And if you just kind of try to pretend that dead body's not laying on the lawn and you try and mow around it, it's going to start to stink, right? It's not good. You're going to have to deal with it at some point, and you want to deal with it earlier rather than later, because then you can get ahead of it, you can overcome it, you can change your presentation, etc. All right. Now, this is again a review for some of you who went to Roadshow, but we're talking about objections. And one of the things I want to just clean up and clarify is that I'm fine is not a sales objection. And when I did polls prior to creating the content for Roadshow, I asked people, what's the biggest, toughest objection you deal with? And they said, I'm fine. This is the biggest and toughest one. And the thing you have to understand is, this is not a sales objection, because you haven't sold anything yet. You haven't even offered anything yet. I mean, they don't really even know who you are. So this is when you're prospecting, this is an objection to someone just saying, hey, I'm not interested in even looking at IT or whatever it is. They're rejecting the offer, whatever the offer is. And so when you're prospecting and in your marketing, your job is not alchemy. Your job is not to turn a lump of coal into a diamond through pressure. And yeah, there's some things you can say to overcome the I'm fine objection. But I lean more towards make another phone call, do more marketing, generate more leads, rather than trying to force, I've got 20 prospects to call, and I gotta get an appointment out of one of them. Call 200 and find the 2 or 3 that are interested is more of what I would recommend. It's